everybody, I am Jackson Lang and welcome to Fantasy Football Fever. Before we begin today, I would like to point out the point system that I am basing all of these points off is full PPR scoring, 1 point per reception. Now, for a quick rundown on what we're going to do today before we get started. We're going to talk about the big injuries throughout the NFL that include Mike Williams, who during Sunday's game against the Vikings tore his ACL. This was confirmed this week with an MRI. Then we will talk some starts and sits and then transition into talking about backfields that are splitting carries currently. Then we will go to some trade advice and then finish up with our segment Keeping Up with the Joneses, which will give an update on the Patriots. Our first big person for injury info, this first segment, which will highlight a bunch of the injuries around the NFL. We will do about 6 players. The first one is who we talked about in our intro, Mike Williams. He suffered a season-ending ACL tear this week. This means that you could go ahead and get rid of him and maybe try to pick up Joshua Palmer, who with Williams' injury will have an increased role. Palmer did not have a bad week last week. He will probably see much bigger weeks. And I don't know what the Chargers are going to do with their wide receiver situation now. So that, Keenan Allen, if you have him, he might get better. But I don't know about picking up any of the other guys currently until we figure out what's going on. Our second player for injury info is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts played last night, and he said that he played through flu-like symptoms. If Hurts really has come down with the flu, this could really impact your team for a week or maybe even 2 if it's really serious. I don't think it will be 2. If you have him, and you don't have a backup quarterback, I would go get one just to be cautious. And if you need to, no harm done. You just go drop the backup quarterback. Doesn't do anything. The third player that we have is David Montgomery. David Montgomery bruised his thigh and believes he'll need a few weeks to fully recover from this injury. Dan Campbell, however, he offered a different timetable. He labeled Montgomery as day-to-day. However, Montgomery missed last week, and he missed Monday's practice, and we'll learn more about his availability later on this week. Our next player, player 4, is Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle was in concussion protocol, which was reported on Monday, so he was still in concussion protocol on Monday, Marcel Luis Jaquez of ESPN reported. This means his ability for Week 4 is up in the air. However, it appears the Dolphins do not need him to put up 70 points, where they blew out the Broncos in a crazy win. So they might, if he's not 100%, they might let him fully recover before they put him in just to make sure, because they're playing great even without him. Austin Eckler is our 5th player. Eckler's been out for 2 weeks now with an ankle issue. Head coach Brandon Stanley of the Chargers has given no timetable for his return, which is really difficult for fantasy managers. I think he can make a comeback this week, even if he's not 100%, because Joshua Kelly has not been able to do anything, really. He's been playing very poorly these past few weeks, played great while Eckler was with him, so I think they might try to bring Eckler back, and maybe that'll help Kelly, but we shall see. Our 6th and final player in injury information is Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley has revealed to people that he has a high ankle sprain. However, last week the Giants were not quick to rule him out, so he could possibly play. He's likely probably to sit out this week and try and make a comeback next week, but I would put him more on the questionable side for this week than the doubtful to outside. I think he still has possibility to play. I'm pretty sure that he will be playing next week because the Giants have not placed him on IR. Maybe he sits out for this week and next week, but he will not be out for a long period of time, especially if the Giants have labeled him a quick healer and have not already placed him on IR when he comes out with saying he has a high ankle sprain. Our next segment is start sits. We are going to do 3 starts for today and 5 sits. We'll start off with these starts. Our first start is Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers has averaged about 15 points a game throughout these past 3 weeks. He has not been overly explosive, exciting, like that Raheem Mostert, Tyreek Hill kind of thing. But he's been consistently good and can be a good wide receiver 2 flex. Puka Nacua is our next start. Nacua had 2 great weeks to start off our season, and then one iffy one However, fantasy managers and you all should look at it this way. The worst that he can play is getting you 12 points. No one was really expecting 30 points from Puka Nakawa until he actually put those numbers up. So I think if he gets you 12, 15 points a game, and that's his floor, that is very good for you. Our next start will be Jared Goff. Even if you have an elite quarterback, I think that if you can get value that you really need in your other starting positions, you might want to get rid of that quarterback. If it'll make your team super good on every position but quarterback, I think your team will still be super good on quarterback. Jared Goff and the Lions are going to have a great year. They've been playing very well, Goff included. Jared Goff, I think he's primed for a great year, and I think you really should be starting him at that quarterback position. Our first sit will be Jerry Jeudy. He played great last week. I just think we need to see a little more from him to make sure that we can put him in. I think that we need 2 of those 16-point-ish weeks. And I really want to make sure that he actually can be a reliable fantasy option before I'm starting him. Our next sit is Breece Hall. Breece Hall had a few bad weeks, but that's not why I've got him as a sit. They're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've been stopping the run very well. I think that he could be at the start in the start column next week, however, when he faces the Broncos, who, wow, they are not good at defending the run. Both of the Dolphins running backs had an amazing game. Our next sit will be Rashad Bateman. With the addition of Zay Flowers this year, Bateman has had a really tough time. He's played horrifically fantasy-wise. He has a total of 9 targets, 7 receptions, and 59 yards. That's over 3 weeks, not 1. He should be sat. At best, you can be sitting him if you really think he's going to have a bounce back. And if you want to, you can go ahead and drop him. And I wouldn't have big regrets. With the way Zay Flowers is playing and OBJ being in there, I think it's going to be tough for Bateman to have a good year. Najee Harris is our next sit. Harris has played terribly and should not be starting for your fantasy team. If he is, go trade for a better player. It doesn't even matter if you've got great players all around him. You need to trade for a better player. Najee Harris is not playing good. If he has a bounce back week this week, fine. So what? He actually needs to show you for 1, maybe 2 weeks if you've got an option that you're like, yeah, I can throw him in. He needs to show you that he can actually score. He scored like 6 points? That's the most points he's scored in a game. He should be scoring 12, 13, 14 a game. He needs to show you he can consistently play good before you want to start him. Our next hit is Marvin Mims Jr. He is the wide receiver for Denver. He's had 2 good weeks. Past 2 weeks have been pretty good, but I think those are just flashes in the pan here. He's had only 7 targets throughout these 2 games, which shows that he's just had a few deep balls and really nothing else. He's not going to have those kind of weeks again, so you should not start him. If he starts to get more targets and Jerry Jeudy starts to go down, and Mims starts taking away from Sutton, then you might be able to start him. But you need Mims to be getting points because of receptions, not yards and touchdowns. Our next segment is Backfield Brawl. This will talk about backfields that are splitting carries and that you may want to keep an eye on. The first team is the Bears. Rashawn Johnson and Khalil Herbert have been splitting carries for the past few weeks. I'm not sure what's going to happen with this backfield in Week 4. I wouldn't be starting either of these backs going into Week 4. They both had pretty bad fantasy games this week. So I think you really, for the next few weeks, unless a star emerges this week, you really want to sit these backs, figure out who's going to start, and if you don't have the starter, you just keep sitting them then. Team 2 is the Falcons. Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson, believe it or not, have actually been splitting carries. Robinson has still had very productive fantasy games, but Algier will be a great waiver pick. I'm not saying that you should be sitting Bijan, but I am telling you to make sure that you are aware of the split of carries and that you aren't overlooking Algier in any sort of way, even in a trade, because he has had great weeks, besides last week, but Bijan didn't have a good week either. Speaking of trades, this next segment is trade advice. Here I will give you players who I think you should be targeting, players that you should get who have been having off weeks, and players who you should get rid of if they are having some flash in the pan weeks that really aren't going to happen again. First player to target is Joshua Palmer, who we talked about earlier when we were talking about Mike Williams in the injury info and how he's out for the year with an ACL tear. Palmer had a decent week, and he'll, like we said, with Mike Williams being out, he's primed for even bigger weeks, and I think he's really going to take on a role in this Charger offense. Our next player you should target, Brock Purdy. Purdy's had 3 very good games and has a promise to become your fantasy starter. You should target him, and if you have him, make him your starter. I personally have Trevor Lawrence and Brock Purdy. I am starting Brock Purdy right now just because of the way he's playing and how explosive that offense has been, and Trevor Lawrence hasn't been playing that good. But if you have him, unless you've got like those top 3 Josh Allen, Patty Mahomes, Jalen Hurts kind of quarterbacks, I think you should start him. The next target, Michael Pittman. Based on Pittman's last few weeks, he has become a very, very good flex, wide receiver 2, and if you've got a really good running back and quarterback tight end situation, wide receiver 1 may be even option. You should go out and get there, mostly because of the consistency he's been having. He's been getting, I think last week he got somewhere around 15. He's been getting those points a lot. Week 1 he had 23. So he's been staying in that range. He's not having, 43 points up, that's 2 points. He's staying consistently in a range that you want from a flex wide receiver 2. The player who you should sell high, which means that you should get rid of them, they had a great week, they're probably not going to have this week again, is Devin Achney. Achney scored 66 points. I'm not saying that he will have a bad week next week, but if there's that kind of person in your league who's like, oh my gosh, he scored 66 points, I need to get this guy, and he'll give you a lot of elite value for Achney, you should go and trade him without any second thoughts, because they had Raheem Mostert, who actually scored more points then, but with that whole situation, it was mostly because they were up, I believe. I mean, they were putting in backups probably then, because they were winning by so much, 70-20 final score. So I think that you should, if you pick him up, great, and if no one wants to trade for him, that's fine, keep him. But if someone's willing to give you elite value, go ahead and trade Devin Achney. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name there. The buy low player who has not been, hasn't been having great weeks, who probably should have better weeks and probably will have better weeks, is Josh Jacobs. He's had a rough first 3 weeks. That just makes him even easier to get for less. He'll be a great player to target with someone like Devin Achney, who is coming off that 66-point week. Getting Josh Jacobs in that, for that kind of player, if someone's willing to do it, that'd be an absolute steal. No matter what Jacobs has done with the 9 points, 11 points, Devin Achney is not going to have 66 points every week. We all know that. So it's going to be if you can get Josh Jacobs for that kind of player who had a great flash in the pan week, is going to have 2 points the rest of the year, go for it. Hey! Our next segment is called Keeping Up with the Joneses. This segment is called this because the Patriots have way too many people with the last name Jones on their team. This will be about the Patriots and giving you an update on how they're doing. Last week, the Patriots beat the Jets with a phenomenal defensive game. The offense, however, needed some work. Ramondre Stevenson was dropping a bunch of the short dumps, the short little passes that Mac gave off to him. Mac Jones also had a few questionable throws, and the receivers could not have come down with that they probably should have. The Pats have advanced to 1-2, and next week they will play the 2-1 Dallas Cowboys. An update on the Joneses of the Patriots. Marcus Jones, he's gone to the IR. Jack Jones was placed on the IR week 1, and Jonathan Jones has been inactive for all 3 weeks. Pharaoh Brown, a surprising player for the Patriots, who had a great fantasy game, and he had a great long touchdown pass. Brown had, I think, 2 targets and then one really set 50-yard reception there. And he played very good for the Patriots. And those tight ends that they have with Pharaoh Brown, Hunter Henry, and Mike Gesicki, that could really turn into a big thing. The Gesicki and Henry's a great duo, and then to know that you have Pharaoh Brown in the back of your pocket who you can throw that deep ball to, that's another one. Brown, though, has to work on his speed. He almost got tackled before the end zone on that one. That is all we have for today on Fantasy Football Fever. I'm your host, Jackson Lang. I'll see you next time.